Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Dogs Down South. It is Tuesday night and flying solo tonight. Gonna be a little fun show. Be missing the guys, but thought I would get on here and we talked some just some little unscripted stuff tonight. Should be fun. Um, if you've not already done so, um, please make sure that you have followed and liked Dogs Down South on Facebook as well as YouTube, trying to get to 1,000 followers on YouTube. And then right after this live, I'm going to be going live on TikTok tonight. So that'll be pretty interesting. So we'll be doing a little playoff talk over on TikTok, Dogs Down South on the TikTok, as well as all other platforms, Instagram, Twitter, uh, you name it, we're on it. And 24 hours later, we are on Apple Podcasts. So you can listen on your way in from work on your way to work. So have not been live since the SEC championship game. Wow. Wow. What a game. Man, don't know where to start. 22-19 dogs. Dogs are SEC champs. Just a man, from top to bottom, it was one of those games that just reminds you of what it's kind of been like this year as a dog fan. And I mean, some people would look at it and say that's bad, good. We've been through this, we've been through that, and but Texas is. I would tell you that Texas is one of your top three teams in the country, and so to be able to pull off a win against Texas in the SEC championship game and beat them twice in the same year, and who knows, maybe see them again for the third time definitely is a huge feat. Obviously, at the expense of an injury or two. We don't know a lot about Brett Thorson, but we do know that he is going to be done for the year with a non-kicking leg knee injury. Um, Man, I hate it for him. He's a really cool guy as well as a really great player. I follow some of his TikTok podcast with Tate Ratledge, and they're funny. And it's cool to hear him talk about what it's like to be a punter at the University of Georgia as an Aussie. So he's a key miss for the rest of the year. He's been really huge the last 2 years in flipping the field for us. And I mean, at one time this year, the last few games, he was averaging over 52, 53 yards a punt, and that's hard to do. Very, very hard to do. So we're definitely going to miss Brett. I don't know what his plans are, but I hope that whatever it is, if it requires surgery, which it sounds like it does, we will be able to. He'll be able to get a full recovery, and then obviously maybe onto the NFL, which I think he'd be a great punter in the NFL. I think he's going to be great. He's got a really good head on his shoulders, really good kid, and a really great punter. But then obviously Carson Beck. Latest news on Carson Beck, and there's so much stuff flying around right now. I mean, everybody from lip reading the first few, hours after the game about him telling Ryan Puglisi they lip read that it's bad. So definitely, what I'm hearing is the two things that I'm hearing that are definites out of the Georgia camp are it's definitely UCL. And it's definitely going to require some care, whether it be rest and treatment or surgery is the thing we haven't heard the 100% on. I'm hearing, everybody wants to break it first, obviously, but I'm hearing that, UCL, Tommy John surgery is going to, it's going to be a 12 to 14 month 11 minimum, 14-month maximum bout with getting him back right. And I don't know if that looks like, then it's, on to the league. If what that looks like for his draft status, I just don't know. I mean, the NFL is, I follow the NFL a little bit, but not really, really closely. So I don't know what that looks like to Carson. I do know that, you look at Gunnar Stockton, obviously he came in the second half and, he did give a little. I mean, a lot of this conversation I'm going to say is not at the expense of Carson Beck, it's more just telling the truth. I mean, he gave a little bit of juice to the team. Um, I think the legs that he provides, that next dimension of being able to run, pass, or hand the ball off is definitely an extra, added measure the defense has to look at. I think when you look at what Georgia was able to do to Quinn Ewers in Texas those 2 times and to make them one-dimensional, very impressive, and it was a big reason why Texas was not successful in beating Georgia for the second time in the SEC championship game. But I mean, if I had to say what I think's happening, I do think that you can definitely know that he's not going to be in the Sugar Bowl. So I think you have 3 weeks to give Gunnar Stockton the best opportunity to go out there and have a few weeks to prepare for get a little bit more knowledge of the playbook all around. But we've been told by Kirby that a lot of those guys take a lot of reps, against the ones. And we have a really good defense. Texas has a really good defense, and I thought Gunnar looked for a guy who was shoved into a game to go 12 for 16 and to stick your head in there when the time was needed. Literally, physically stick your head in there when the time is needed to try to, bring home an SEC championship was incredible. I mean, I think he does add some juice. Reminds me of a couple of stories with a Jacob Eason and a Jake Fromm, or a Stetson Bennett, and coming off of when JT Daniels got hurt. I mean, it's the story, man, and it's why Kirby looks at quarterbacks and looks at players in general and wants players to be bought into the culture and what Georgia's trying to do. Big news also out of Georgia today, and we'll get to some portal stuff, is that Nitro Tuggle did enter the portal or experimented with entering the portal yesterday, day before, and announced today that he will not be entering the portal. And so that was great news. I was really excited about what Nitro is going to add to our offense. And maybe with what you're looking at and the product on the field with all the drops and everything, maybe Kirby's at his wit's end with some of these drops. And maybe some of these receivers are going to get more opportunities because what's the worst that happened? We're dropping the ball as it is. But we'll get to all that. But big win, SEC championship win for the Dogs. Before we really break down, I mean, there's nothing, that's not really just anything to break down Texas-wise. I mean, we've heard it from all ends of the spectrum this week, from all areas of broadcasting. I mean, just a great overall win. If I had to hit some big time, headers about the SEC championship game, gutsy stuff by Gunnar Stockton. I think some receivers made some great catches in the second half, needed to be there. Tight end play got better. We got a little bit, we got some quarterback draw entered into the building. The defense just absolutely tackled. And I think our defensive line had the best game of their year in that game. I thought they controlled the line of scrimmage. We stopped the run, did a great job stopping the run, which is completely different than Georgia Tech the week before. And so I think it was one of the defense's best games of the year. I think it was the most complete game by our defense, secondary, linebackers, complete defense. There's been some dominating linebacker games. The last time we played Texas, I felt like that the linebackers dominated that game. I felt like we had a 50% Michael Williams. And so I think this time around, we had a little bit more healthy of a defense. It was great to have Smile back in the middle of that defense. That was definitely insanely helpful. And so, it was a great team win. I mean, there's so many things you could say about that game. But as we get into the playoff talk and what that looks like, we can talk about a little bit of everything. We'll look at bowl game matchups. But let's talk about it. As you can see behind me, I have a graphic behind me looking at the college football playoffs. And I'm going to be honest with you, right off the jump, I will tell you that this is a disaster. This bracket, this college football playoff is year one is a disaster. I'm going to take the header down from my name down here in Dogs Down South so you can see the entire bracket, but this is a disaster. So obviously, if you were watching on Sunday at noon, this came out, and I think everybody knows by now. And if you don't, this is your first time seeing it. I'm glad I could put it up for you. Um, obviously Oregon came in as a top seed. Georgia slid into the second seed. You got a third seed Boise State, fourth seed Arizona State. You got Ohio State now receiving a home game against Tennessee. Texas has Clemson coming to Austin. SMU's got to go to Happy Valley and probably face a whiteout and maybe some snow. And then you got Notre Dame, who's going to get a visit from Indiana, a little in-state rivalry for that game. This is a disaster. So let's talk about what is the most disasterful part of it. I'll give you the first one. Oregon, no reward for going 13-0. No reward for going 13-0, beating Ohio State. Beating. I think I beat some good teams this year. Ohio State, Penn State. I think that you go 13-0 and you get stuck in here because what happens, these teams that got into these weird spots and shoved all these other teams up a notch. The reward for 13-0 is you get the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee, and then after that you get the winner of Texas, Clemson. So you have Texas, Ohio State, Tennessee on your side, whereas Georgia has Penn State, SMU, Notre Dame, Indiana. I definitely will tell you that Texas and Oregon got the best end of this deal. I'm sorry, Texas got the best end of this deal as far as not being a 1-4 seed. And then Georgia probably got a better seeding than Oregon did by being a second seed, which is crazy. There's no reason that in a 12-team playoff, I think the goal should be to get, and I think they will talk about this as soon as January 21st hits after the 20th when the national championships played. I think this will be already starting to be looked at. I think that you're going to have to try to get the 12 best teams. So in order to do that, they may expand this. They may go to 16 teams. They may go to 14 teams. 14 might be the most obvious because I think you need to take away these. You're trying to follow this bowl alliance thing, and it's not working because, in my opinion, one other thing that really bothers me is how does Georgia and Oregon, and I'm not even going to talk about Boise and Arizona State, how do they get rewarded when they don't get a home game, right? So these teams that made it in by having to be voted in by the committee, they either get a home or away game. And if you're a 5, 6, 7, 8, you're sitting pretty because Ohio State gets Tennessee at home. I didn't agree with that. I think Ohio State should have had to go to Neyland. Much harder schedule from Neyland, but strength of schedule didn't matter to this committee. It was very obvious. Indiana, Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame should even be in this playoff. I mean, I don't. You play nobody. You lost to Northern Illinois. You don't play a championship game, and now you get to host a home game, and you get to be in the side of the bracket that's probably, besides Georgia in your bracket, probably the easiest to deal with, besides playing a game against per se maybe a Texas or an Ohio State, Tennessee, so on and so forth. Let me clear my voice real quick. So yeah, I think this is botched. I think if you look at Arizona State at 4, they're going to explain to you all day long that they deserve to be there. They don't. The Big 12 conference does not deserve to have anybody in those top 4. They just don't. I think when you look at this field, a lot of people are like, well, should Alabama got in? Should Ole Miss got in? Should have Miami got in? Should per the AP? Yeah, they should have gotten in. Now, the way that the committee was doing this, no, they shouldn't have got in because what the committee was looking for and the tendencies of the committee, this is what you got. But I think with what they were going off of, there's no way you could have put Alabama in and not SMU in because they said from jump, I mean, they did follow their rules. They said that we are going to honor the championship games. It's why if you really were looking in depth to the bracket, you would notice that last week's bracket, besides what happened on championship week and the seedings flipping, you would have noticed that that bracket was what they wanted to happen. It's what they thought would happen. They didn't think that SMU would lose to Clemson. I don't think. I knew it was a possibility, but I didn't think that. I don't think they thought that Georgia was going to beat Texas. I think that they thought Texas was going to be sitting right there, and probably Georgia was going to be sitting at 7, maybe. I don't think they'd have been sitting at 5. They wouldn't have given them 5. The committee doesn't really like Georgia. I can't tell you why, but I mean, so if you look at it, you get 3 SEC teams in, you get 3 Big Ten teams in, and I'm sorry, 4 Big Ten teams in. You get a Mountain West, 2 ACCs in, and a Big 12. So, it's a disaster. And so I think, in my opinion, if you wanted to get the top 12 teams in, I honestly will tell you that, and I'll try to kind of get this hooked up to where I can point the stuff off my iPad, but I would probably look at, I would say Oregon would get your top spot. Georgia would probably stay there with that. I would have moved into that 3rd spot. I would probably move Texas into that 3rd spot. The 4th spot probably would have been entertained by, I would say Penn State. 5th would have probably been, in my opinion, it'd have been Ohio State. 6th probably would have been, and I'm just following, I'm just following the AP. Sorry, I hit a thing right there. Let's look. So yeah, I would have had Penn State at 4. I mean, the AP likes Notre Dame there. I would have had Notre Dame lower just because of the fact that you don't play a conference championship and you lost to Northern Illinois. So the AP even has Notre Dame at 5. I'd get them in here if they were in the top 12. If we were getting the top 12 best teams, I would have Penn State in there at 4. I'd have Ohio State at 5. Tennessee at 6. Indiana at 7. Probably Boise at 8. I would have Notre Dame at 9. Alabama at 10. And probably now that's where it would get tricky. Excuse me. That's where it would get tricky because still in a 12-team playoff, if you get the best teams in there, I still say that the fight comes down to, do you honor the Big 12 champion? You do. So I think the Big 12 champion still would get in because if you win it, but if it was just based off of best 12 teams, I don't know. I mean, you got a 2-loss Big 12 team. I think right now Alabama could beat Arizona State. I think Ole Miss could beat Arizona State. I think South Carolina would give them a run for their money. So if you want me to really get crazy, I would take Notre Dame out of there. So my crazy top 12. If you want to get the best 12 teams in there and you want to have a really great playoff and figure out who the national champion really is, you're going to go 1 Oregon, 2 Georgia, 3 Texas, 4 Penn State, 5 Ohio State, 6 Tennessee, 7 Indiana, 8 Boise, 9 SMU, 10 Alabama, 11 Ole Miss, 12 South Carolina. Now that's crazy, but Arizona State doesn't even matter because Arizona State on a neutral site is not going to beat South Carolina, Alabama, or Ole Miss. They're just not. They're not. I mean, yeah, they look good. They look good against Iowa State, but they're not. They're not quality. I mean, of course, you say that, and you know how this has gone this year. We'll have a Boise State versus Arizona State for the national championship, or SMU Arizona State for the national championship, or something like that. This is a disaster. The second reason it's a disaster is because at the end of the day, um, I think there was some bias shown. Like these, like the reward for Oregon and Georgia, Boise, and Arizona State is an extra week of health. But then they lose a week of. I mean, they're just sitting for another week, and then they got to go on the road, right? So why not play those bowls in these 4 games? So these 4 games that are getting, I think they are Sugar, Peach, Fiesta, something else. I don't know. I have to look. But why not give them? Why not give them the bowl games? And then why not you have to come to Athens? Why don't you have to come to Eugene, come to Arizona State, come to Boise, come to the Smurf Turf, and then we go to those. So why don't you flip this? I mean, I do understand what you're trying to do, and say, oh well, we're trying to congratulate them to go on a bowl. It's business. This has nothing to do with bowl games anymore. This is business, and the bowl game list already is a joke. So, I mean, if you read some of the names of these bowls, it's a joke. But in my opinion, I would say I would flip this. I would say these 4 teams over here, when they play their first game, somebody will be coming to Athens. Somebody will be coming to Eugene. I don't care if Tennessee and Ohio State play in the Fiesta Bowl. I don't care if SMU and Penn State plays in the Sugar Bowl. I care less. The reward for getting the bye should be they get like Georgia gets the home game. Then they go on the road, and then they go to the national championship wherever's on the road. They go on the road twice, but instead, Georgia stands a chance of going on the road 3 times, which they will. I mean, and if they go to the national championship, it's in Atlanta, so they would have been in that place 3 times this year. So, but let's look at these matchups real quick. So obviously, when you look at Ohio State, you look at Tennessee. I think what I see right off the bat is an Ohio State team that it's a good time to get Ohio State. There's a lot in the balance with Ryan Day right now. I think a lot can be said about his job status. Some people think he has to win out to keep his job. Some people think that he at least has to get through, round 1 at home. I, I don't think um, another loss at Ohio State's going to do him any favors. At the shoe, I really don't know, man. I think at the end of the day, your last time you were there, you lost to Michigan, and then you get Ohio State fans get their wish, and they get to the playoffs, and then they get Ohio State at home. You get Tennessee at home, and then you lose at home. I don't know if Ryan Day can survive losing to Michigan in first round out when you got a $20,000 NIL team that stands a chance to be, I don't know, like what happens when that goes down? Like how many of those players get out of Dodge? I mean, how many of those players are just going to feel like this ain't a place I can win? I mean, we can. Ohio State's always going to be on the front page of every news outlet out there, where they're always going to have impressive teams. They're always going to have great fan support, hopefully. But they're going to be a team that it's like, okay, we just gave you. I'm sorry, I said 20,000. We just gave you $20 million to go build a team, and you were unsuccessful, or were you successful and your coaching was just terrible? Um, I'm super excited about Chip Kelly. I think Chip Kelly was. I think he. I think he hurt himself. He hurt Ohio State and he hurt himself against Michigan because I don't. I don't know how he thought he was going to just man up and run the ball through that really good defensive line of Michigan. I mean, don't get me wrong, Michigan is down this year from previous years, but they're not down on that defensive line. Mason Graham and those guys on that defensive line do a really great job. Um, they lined up and they tried to they just tried to muscle them and it didn't work. And then you look at, I think Chip Kelly I think what you could have done to Michigan was you could have thrown the ball a whole lot. I'd much rather have that line missing their left tackle and center. I'd much rather have them pass protecting a little bit and seeing if Will Howard can get these receivers out there in space. I think that would have been something that kind of pushed, kind of pushed Michigan to the brink. But I don't know if Ryan Day survives this. I do know Tennessee has a really great defensive line. They're not going to be able to do it against them either. If they think they're going to come in with the same game plan against Tennessee, I think possibly Tennessee's got a better defensive line even than Michigan, and Michigan's just pretty good. I think what you're dealing with Tennessee is an improved secondary. We talked about it at the very beginning of the year, which I think I want to re-air that show just to see where we were at as far as like what we thought was going to happen here. Be cool to go back and listen to. Um, but Tennessee's got a really great defensive line. I think be interesting to see Dylan Sampson versus this Ohio State defense, this run game of Tennessee's. But I do think Nico's going to have to beat this defense with some big plays. I think it's going to be crucial that these wide receivers from Tennessee, are able to get some big plays. I don't think Tennessee can survive being one dimensional. There's going to be a sense of urgency from this Ohio State team, if not from this Ohio State team, from this coaching staff and Ryan Day, because he is. I say at least in the first round, he is playing for his job. I don't know if if he wins and he gets to Oregon and he got, go play Oregon and you lose to Oregon twice. I don't know, man. I mean, the way it sits, it doesn't. I mean, it's a hard road for Ohio State. I mean, you look at they win. Let's say Texas takes care of business, plays Arizona State, takes care of business, and let's just say you do beat Oregon, which will be hard to do, and then you got to go play. Then you got to go play Texas, who's, I mean, Sark's pissed. They didn't get an SEC championship. They're being doubted. This is Texas we're talking about. This is Texas money. This is Texas first year in the SEC. This is the dominance of a Texas team, right? I don't know, man. Like, maybe some people even say that, like, it's national championship, and maybe he can survive a loss in the national championship, maybe a close game, but he can't survive a bad beating in the national championship game. That's all crazy to think about. But I mean, I'm not gonna sit back. He's kind of gotten himself into this fiasco, right? But moving on, I mean, we're going to talk a lot about these games the next few weeks. Then you got Texas, Clemson. I mean, you got Clemson going to Texas, to Austin. I mean, this will be a game where, if you can look at Clemson and you go, well, what are the keys for Clemson to pull this off? I think you got to look at Clemson and go, what this is not the Clemson defense of old. Does it have some good players on that defense? Yeah, but I think that people have been allowed to run the ball on Clemson a lot more this year than they've ever had. And so, I don't know what it is for Texas that would be the key. I definitely will tell you before the Georgia game that they were seeing some great improvement in the run game, with Wisner and Blue. I think if Clemson's going to have an opportunity for this game, I mean, you look at Cade Klubnik going back to his stomping grounds. He's from that area, and he's going to be playing, very hostile crowd. That's one thing I'm really curious to see about these games, and I'm curious to see how they do these student tickets and everything like that. I mean, you saw the Texas A&M ticket lines for students. Like, how are they going to do this for students? Like, or do they even guarantee anything for students? I mean, I don't know how the gate and the money works towards the college football playoff. Like, is this like, and I don't even know, like, if you're in Texas and you have, if you have year-round tickets, if you have season tickets, like, do you get first dibs? Like, do they take your chair back and get rid of it? I was thinking about that the other day. Like, Georgia gets a home game, like, and your family seats are, 40-yard line, 10 rows up. Is your seat not even like it ain't even like you buying tickets like you're buying them for an away game? That's interesting because I'd love to know that. But all in all, I think for Clemson to do well in this game, I think they're going to have to make sure. I think they're going to have to do what Georgia did. They're going to have to make Clemson one-dimensional. They're going to have to make them throw the ball and have to get pressure with 4. And on offense, I think Kate Klubnik's going to have to, he's going to have to show that he can beat them with his legs and his arm. He's going to have to be able to hit some of these deep balls and stretch the field a little bit to soften up that box. And I think there's marginal, very very small marginal ways that Clemson could win this game, but I think Texas will be favored. I think they are favored. I think they're favored around 11. Um, so yeah. I mean, then you look at going down the league, you're looking at Penn State, SMU. This will be a whiteout in at Beaver Stadium, and man, be a whiteout. And I don't know, man. When you look at Pennsylvania on December 21st or 20th, whichever that day is, and maybe a chance of snow, and you got SMU who's not used to that weather and definitely have Southern in their name for a reason. So I don't know, man. I mean, elements are one thing that was going to make this stadium environment interesting too, as well as the crowd, right? I think it'd be cool for these these stadiums to see different teams that they've never played before in their home stadium. Like, how many? I mean, Indiana and Notre Dame. I have to go back and look when the last time they locked horns, but that'll be interesting. But I think the same thing. I think what you saw from SMU was if SMU doesn't sink itself from jump, I think it got behind against a Clemson team that had them on the ropes. And somebody said the other day, they were like, man, what if SMU and Clemson lock horns again? I mean, you typically have a chance at this being a Big 12, ACC, or SEC rematch. You could. I mean, you could see Texas and Georgia again. You could see Oregon and Penn State again. You could see SMU and Clemson again, and you could see Ohio State, Penn State again. I mean, you saw them this year. So interesting, very interesting. I think in order for Penn State to be successful in this game, I think it's got to rely on the run. I think there's a little bit of a cloud over James Franklin's head on this, the ability to win the big game. So I don't know. I think, I mean, it's SMU, but Lashley and them, it's going to be hard to go in there and do what they did. What they did against Clemson, a neutral site. I mean, this place is going to be rocking. I mean, you're going to have anywhere. I've always hear that they always oversell that stadium too. So there's like, it can seat like 112, 113,000, but they usually sell it for like 115, and people are just like standing room only, which is wild. And I'm sure some of those students are like, I'm fine with it as long as I'm in the game. It's going to be a crazy environment. It's going to be probably cold. It's going to be nasty, possibly. I'm just speculating. I'm obviously giving the best outcome that you would want from these playoff games. But I think in the end, once again, you're looking at an SMU team that's got to go in and beat a good Penn State team. And we're going to pick them later on. We're going to talk more about. We're going to talk more about all these teams in the future. And the last one, Notre Dame, Indiana. I mean, it's wild to know that Kirk Signetti thinks that, he's like, look, man, we're supposed to be here, yada yada. And it's just like when he talks, man, he either reeks of incredible arrogance, or he's got his crap together and he knows what he's holding. Now, the one game I can say that I watched him a little closely was against Ohio State, and I do feel like there was a lot of juice and adrenaline from them. Excuse me, let me clear my throat. Sorry. There was a lot of juice, a lot of adrenaline from them against Ohio State. But in the end, what kind of took a toll on them was the ability for Ohio State to be balanced, find those receivers in space. I think Will Howard had a really good game that week. I think you saw a little bit of an exposed team due to, you know, stars behind athletes' names, I think came into play a little bit. So that'll be an interesting game though, because it's in Indiana. I mean, it's in South Bend, but this is like a crosstown rivalry. This is Big Ten versus a team that's too scared to get in any conference. I mean, let's just put it like, let's just be honest. If you're a Notre Dame fan, like, you can't say much. Like, you win this game against Indiana, yeah. But when you win that game against Indiana, then you got to come to Athens. Um, so, I mean, is what it is. I'm curious to see how this pans out. I do think that Notre Dame, Riley Leonard, I think, this is going to, it can either be incredibly telling or incredibly scary for Notre Dame, because I do feel like, when you look at Notre Dame and you look at their schedule, I was going to pull that up right now. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, man, it's just it's really tough. A&M was a good win in A&M. Lost to Northern Illinois. You can call it early in the year. Purdue. I mean, Purdue's probably the worst team in college football. Miami of Ohio, Louisville. I mean, at home, scraped by against a Louisville team that actually ended up not being really great this year at the end of the year. Stanford, Georgia Tech, total domination against Tech. I mean, it's not horrible. Navy, FSU, Virginia, Army, USC. I mean, you didn't have USC that good until the fourth. So I don't know. Then I mean, you're looking at Indiana, you know, as that goes. You look at obviously Riley Leonard, and one of the biggest things that he was. I mean, over 2,000 yards passing. He presents some trouble in the rushing game as well. I mean, he had 721 yards of rushing, second highest rusher on the team. So yeah, I mean, it's Notre Dame. I don't think they should be there. If they're not in my bracket. I mean, if I'm honestly looking at it very closely, when you look at Indiana, this is going to be a really a really good game, because of the fact that I think Cignetti's a really great preparer. I think that you look at the Michigan win, you look at, I mean, once again though, you look at Indiana and it's tough, man, because they played some of the same teams that Notre Dame did. I mean, they played Navy, won by the same margin, FSU, same margin. So it's weird. Weird and telling. If anything, I would say Indiana's schedule is even weaker. Played Charlotte, Maryland, Northwestern, Michigan State, Purdue, Western Illinois, Florida International. It'd be interesting. But this is a flawed system. It's a flawed system. It's not good. It's not good. I think they're gonna relook at this and really go from there. But yeah, and I mean, too, you got to look at some of these things about this playoff and go, what is the end goal from all of this? Like when you look, and I'm having to say, when you look at what's going on here, you look at Oregon, you look at Georgia, like, yeah, they get the 3 weeks off, but I think, man, how powerful right off the jump would it be if Georgia gets 3 weeks off, then you got to come to Athens, um, this Notre Dame team that didn't bode well in Athens a few years ago. So cool stuff. Playoffs will be a big topic as we look at some bowls. Man, for me, the bowl season stuff is just we really got to look at what's going on with bowls now. Some of the names, I mean, I think, and I don't even know like copyright laws, whatever. But guys, like the Snoop Dogg Bowl, like, I don't know, man. Like, I really don't know. Don't know where we're at with that. I do see that. I'm finally seeing what. So it looks like it's Fiesta for Boise, and whoever wins, it's Chick-fil-A Peach for Arizona, and whoever wins, which is a haul, right? Arizona, you got to have fans come all the way across to Atlanta, right? Oregon's Rose, so not backyard, but pretty close. Georgia Sugar. I think Georgia fans will travel down there. And then look at the second round being Orange, Cotton, um, and then national championship being at Mercedes Benz. I think some of the most intriguing bowl games outside of this, then we'll get away from the bowl games and we'll kind of talk portal a little bit. I think some of the most intriguing bowl games, one would be Alabama, Michigan, ReliaQuest Bowl on New Year's Eve at noon. Interested to see South Carolina and Illinois. Brett Bleeman took Illinois from 3-7 to 9-3 this year. So kudos to him playing a really hot South Carolina team, which is once again on New Year's Eve. That game will start. It is a new. Starts 3:00 kickoff, and then 3:30 the Kinder's Texas Bowl, Baylor LSU. But man, once again, it's a struggle to really find an incredible bowl matchup, man. Like it really is. I mean, some of these teams got no reward. Miami gets Iowa State, the Pop Tarts Bowl. Hey, Nebraska 6-6. I mean, this is supposed to be their year, right? I mean, Dylan Raiola, Matt Rule talking all the portal noise here or there, and yeah, man, bad boy mowers, Pinstripe Bowl. Man, you get Boston College. Wow. A&M, man, what a reward! You get to go to the Las Vegas Bowl and play USC, which is one of the biggest flop failures of the year. Liberty Bowl, Arkansas, Texas Tech, man, and that's the Depression Bowl, like shoulda, coulda, woulda bowl type thing. I've seen flashes of greatness from Texas Tech this year, and I've seen flashes of greatness from Arkansas, and I've seen flashes of nothing from both of these. Oklahoma Navy, Armed Forces Bowl, Vanderbilt and Tech, man, Birmingham Bowl. I think that bowl should have been a little bit more. I mean, I think it should have been more to that than it was, but man, wild, wild. So yeah, let's talk portal. So obviously the portal opened on yesterday. I think I mentioned it. Big news. Nitro Tuggle talked about leaving Georgia, and instead he is staying put. We did lose, obviously, before the SEC championship game, Humphreys, and we lost today Jamal Jarrett to the portal. Um, you know, and we don't know. I mean, I will tell you, it's like Kirby has said before. You got to practice well to play. I mean, Jarrett obviously, suffered from, some injuries and things of that nature, and so, you got to wonder. You got to wonder if maybe he just never really practiced up to snuff. Um, and just never could, cut into any of that. But Georgia, I, I will say that I think that Georgia will be active. In this portal, I think, and we could sit here all day and talk portal. I think we'll stick to Georgia and what I think they'll go out and what I think they need. Um, you know, it's intriguing that with this Gunnar Stockton thing, there was rumor, of Arnold uh, from Oklahoma, and does Georgia go and pull the trigger on him, and what does that look like? And is Gunnar the guy? And here you're going to see it, like you're going to see it, full tilt. If Gunnar is the guy, you got no choice to. He's the guy now, and so obviously, you know, do I think that Georgia could look in the portal? I think they'll look at everything in the portal. But if I'm looking at positions of interest in the portal, I think I think still you can always use help on the offensive line. You could always use help on the defensive line. I think defensive line was a struggle. We'll lose a good bit next year on the defensive line. Obviously, why we rebolstered that line will be young, but it will be very talented with the group of recruits, Elijah Griffin coming in, uh, and a couple other really big players coming on that line. But I think you'll see Georgia on the offensive side of the ball really go into the portal and get some wideouts. I think we were able to get some wideout help with some players we got in early signing. But I also think we're going to go in the portal. There's names like Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech. I think they'll be looked at. Dane Key from Kentucky might be a look from Georgia. Those are two that come to mind right off the bat. I look at those two names, and there's still more out there. The kid from Texas Tech, I forget his name. I heard Malik Murphy's back in the mix. I've heard Luke Kromenhoek is back in the mix. But I do think Georgia will be, if they'll be active either way. But I think their main activity is going to come at the wide receiver position, probably the defensive and offensive line. I think that's where they're going to go most. Maybe they might try to scoop a DB or a DB or a wide receiver, but we're not really talking about what we lose yet, but we'll be active in the portal. But I'm sure Kirby's already had those conversations and start having those conversations. And I think Nitro Tuggle could be a great addition to us this year, even still, and next year. I mean, you can ask yourself sometimes, what do we have to lose? I personally think that you're going to see some relationships get built with Gunner and people like London Humphreys in the playoffs. I think you're going to see some relationships with Nitro Tuggle. I think you're going to see some relationships with the tight ends in more of a way like Stetson and Monken use the tight ends. I think it's really easy to use the tight ends when you can get them out RPO and either get them blocking or going out for passes. It'll make it interesting. I would be, not that I don't think Bobo knows what he's doing, but I would definitely be on the horn with Monken going, hey, like, this could look very similar to some Stetson stuff. Like, what do you see? You look at the tight end groupings we have. You look at some of the things going on, and what do we look like right here? Like, where can we be with this? And very similar to a Baltimore Ravens offense right now with how the RPO game, the quarterback bootleg game. Like, we're there. We're definitely in an interesting part of our season, and there ain't much tape on Gunnar Stockton. So very interesting. Yeah. So we talked a lot about playoff. We talked a little bit about portal, and we're not talking too much about portal because we're still in it. But I will tell you that I think Georgia will be very active in the wide receiver area. They could be active in the secondary, defensive line, definitely offensive line are always needs, and maybe a quarterback. I don't know, but I definitely think if I had to categorize it, I think for me, first is wide receiver, second is probably defensive line. It'd be nice to get an anchor down there that's got a little bit of a tenure, I guess I want to say. So yeah. But anyways, really, really great week. Just wanted to get some playoff talk out there. If you're not busy, I'm going to be going live on TikTok here in just a little bit to talk some college football playoff and kind of the same thing we did on here. But if you want to swing over there and do anything, jot some comments or say some highs, that'll be great. But yeah, so Dogs, SEC champions, they get some well-needed rest. We definitely will be live the next few weeks around Christmas and headed into, we'll do a little pick'em before the December 20th games, December 20th, 21st. We get to sit back and enjoy, watching these guys beat up on themselves. And so that'll be interesting, to say the least, and so and fun. the next time we'll take the field, it will be, we don't know our opponent, but it will be January 1st, New Year's Day, 8:45. So you might need to catch you a little nap towards the afternoon if you eat a big meal on New Year's Day, so that you can make sure that you're up and ready to cheer on the dogs. But we'll see you plenty of times before then. So for myself, and we missed the guys, Fish, Rich Man, missed you tonight, but hope to catch you next week, and we'll all be together, and we'll get some more chatter about a lot of these hot topics coming into the playoffs and then coming into the off season. But for myself and all the dog fans out there, SEC champion Georgia Bulldogs, you guys have a great night, and go Dogs.